Welcome to The Best Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Bradley H. Werrell, and we're here to explore options and potentials to help us grow as individuals and as a community with one another in these difficult times and challenging times. We're exploring all manner of potentials related to the human experience, physical, psychological, medical, spiritual. It's a wonderful opportunity that we now experience in this critical phase of our human evolution. And I welcome you to join us in our podcast, become more aware, and identify with people who are helpful and supportive of you in your efforts as a human being on this planet and elsewhere too. We're going to be meeting people who are doing things that are widely variant from what is so-called normal within our society. In the creative space, within the social space, our common purpose, seeking to generate positive potentials to improve the lives of everyone in our sphere of influence, and to expand that sphere of influence so that we may positively influence others that are not yet engaged directly with us. That's the goal here. We will learn more about each other as we go. I wish you the very best. Thank you very much for tuning in.
You do kind of have the Picard thing going on. That works.
That's it. So this is Bradley Werrell, your host with the Best Medicine podcast. Here we're sitting with Linda Gerber, a professional coach. We're going to talk about some very interesting thoughts and patterns of behavior related to habits, their formation, their disruption and interruption and modification and improvement of. And it's like, the question is like this, when we talk about habits, it's like how people, it's an interesting function though. People generally, in my estimation of it, they think of a habit and they always think of it in the negative sense. Like, I'm a smoker, I want to stop smoking, I want to not smoke. So do you think of it in a negative sense? And so it's like this, it's like, there's a displacement issue. I call it psychic displacement. So it's like if you remove the thing, there's a vacuum created inside your psychological space, which is like, there's an empty space that will be filled up with something. And so when you take away the thing, there's a empty space that is shaped exactly like the thing that you just removed.
That's right.
So if you take the cigarettes away, there's a cigarette-shaped space right between your fingers that's not being used and is so looking to get used again because it's empty.
So your whole system of your who you are, your organization, your friends are all shaped around that same cigarette-shaped hole. So your whole system is shaped to keep it exactly the way it is. It wants that cigarette back.
That's a funny word to use, want, because it's like, let me look this up real quick. This has the same stem as the word vacancy.
Oh, no kidding. Is that right?
Yes. And it's like, I'm looking it up. It's quite, that's an interesting, because it's like, it is. The people say they want to not smoke. And I'm like, clearly you're not correct because you are smoking.
You know, let me ask you this. How does this fit in? Because I've been reading a lot of literature on habits. And another way to think about it is as your subconscious person. So there's another person that's running on autopilot, like Linda, that is made up of Linda's habits. And so I can give things to habit Linda to do that I don't have to think about. Smoking the cigarettes, drinking the Diet Coke.
Oh my.
All those things that we would consider in the negative habits, getting back to that realm.
No,
so
that's not right. That's not right. They're not negative habits.
Well,
They're
okay.
positive habits.
They're habits.
You just don't like them.
Yes. Well, you had started out by saying many people think about habits in the negative. Like, I want to give up. I want to quit smoking.
They want to get rid of it.
But I have this other person that I can, if I think about it this way, that I can give. What can I give Habit Linda? Well, I could give Habit Linda my organization of how I get ready for the day. So I make it a habit to do certain things in a certain way to make sure I get the outcome I want. So I can give things to Habit Linda so my brain is not actively thinking about them. I don't have to consciously attend to them every day. So just another way of thinking about habits is they are running in the background all the time, like a computer program all the time.
Yeah.
And the computer is set up to run the program exactly that way.
Right.
So just
So
another way to think about
I
them.
call it autopilot.
Yes. So I
So
have autopilot Linda.
when you're driving to wherever, and you stop paying attention and you go into the habitual pattern that you always do, and it's like, oh, you accidentally drove to work when you were trying to go.
Yeah, how did I get here? I don't remember those 5 turns and the 3 lights. That's right.
Right.
So what do you do about that, Dr. Werrell, once you think about, okay, now I have this cigarette-shaped hole, or I have autopilot Linda smoking.
Right. So the issue is this: is you can't, you don't make the negative. You don't eliminate the habit. You don't try to eliminate the thing that is symbolic of the habit, which is the cigarette. Right. You don't try to negate the thing, but you have to positively push it out by displacement, in my estimation.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like this. You're like, I'm going to run around the block every time I feel like smoking a cigarette. Right? If you do that, then you're introducing something new that takes the space of and displaces the thing and pushes it away.
So have you heard the concept, and I know you have, Keystone Species? So in an ecosystem, you're going to have a cornerstone species that upon which, if you get rid of that one, everything else changes. So you have Keystone. And
Right.
So another way to think about habits, about changing them, is what is the cornerstone? What is the key to that? For example, smoking. Do you only smoke when you go to bars? Do you
Right,
only
right.
smoke when you're around this particular person?
It's like
So
what triggers it.
that's it.
So I tell people to do this, okay? Like I say, this is an interesting function, which is we're talking about smoking, okay? So I say, what we're gonna do is say, so you're gonna have an urge to smoke. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna study the urge to smoke. And we're now gonna make it a prey animal. And so we're going to study it, and we're gonna make notes on it. And so like what you do then, you're gonna be a smoker, and you're gonna have an urge to smoke. And you're gonna look at your clock, and you're gonna go, I will burn one in 4 minutes. And then you just watch the urge to smoke and see if it can last 4 minutes without the cigarette.
I love
You know what
that.
I mean? And if you still want to smoke,
Yes.
you smoke. The other way to do it is to stop smoking as soon as that urge is satisfied. And I was talking to a lady, and the husband was doing this. Now the lady was in the room, and the husband was doing this because he was quitting smoking early.
Right.
And she's like, he's smoking like 4 packs a day or something like that, right? Because he was burning only some of it, not the whole thing. Right? He's just burning the tiny. And it's like, dude, you're counting it all wrong. And it's just, so it's like this. So the idea being that once you observe the urge to smoke, for instance, which is the habit, right, that you're satisfying with the behavior, that you now are gaining a handle on it, because now you're watching it, and then you're observing it and making it will change and go away.
So on that exact point, so you're getting into mindfulness and being consciously mindful. So people do that when they are eating. So for example, people that overeat or eat really, really quickly, one of the things that folks will recommend for them is to really enjoy the meal. So we sit down, we have a nice plate. You notice how hot or cold, you notice all the sensuality of the food, and you're chewing it slowly, and have found that kind of mindfulness, like what you're talking about with cigarettes, is very effective with not only just enjoyment, but with satiation, getting to that point faster and getting control of themselves.
Right. And that's like presentation is interesting with food, because it is like a ritualistic behavior if you do it right. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I have found, for example, how many people out there, I know your audience is full of them. I view a serving size as a package. So if that is a little small snack size, well, that's a serving size. Or the ginormous family pack, that's clearly a serving size because it's one package presentation. But certainly mindfulness is effective in that regard.
Right.
So, okay, so you've talked about smoking. We've talked about observing it. How does that, you outlined us starting out with formation, disruption, and improvement on habits. How does a habit form?
Oh, I think it's like, I think people do, it's interesting because it's like, I think it was Jonathan Haidt talked about the elephant and the rider. And it's an emotional satisfaction. So you're like throwing the elephant a peanut, and the peanut likes the elephant likes the peanut to get the elephant to do something. And it's like, okay, so it gets used to it and it wants its peanut, right? And it's like, that's the habitual function, which is, it's like, we're creatures of habit, we're creatures of comfort. And so it's like, we want to be comfortable. And so we comfort ourselves by doing the thing.
So even if, that's such a good point, let's just stay there for a second. So even if the thing I could pick up in itself and I could say, boy, that's destructive, or that's not helpful to me, or whatever, that thing is still doing something for me, which is why I developed the habit. Like it tastes good, or it's taking place of something, or it's doing something that I don't want to get rid of. It's a peanut.
It's providing some value to you that you are not acknowledging, perhaps. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like it's distracting you, maybe, or it's this one was a good one. So I was talking to a guy, and he's like, his blood pressure was real high, and he's like, I think it's probably, I was doing research on the internet, and it's probably because I drink a lot. And I read that drinking makes your blood pressure go up, and I'm like, well, that's very interesting. I said, now we don't, it's interesting that we blame the alcohol, but what about the possibility that it's your asshole boss that causes you to drink like crazy, and it allows you to go back to work again tomorrow, that's driving your blood pressure up? You know what I mean? I don't know if they've qualified that. I don't know. And I'm like, just thinking about it as a possibility, because there's a reason you're drinking. I'm pretty sure.
How did that hit him? That's an interesting observation.
He thought it was funny, which is like, of course it's funny. That's the way I operate.
That's the way that's why I said it. Hello.
It's like, so, because it's like, well, let's just think about it. Because it's like, well, I mean, it's like, so Dr. Ring would talk about it like this. He would say something like, blaming the skid marks for the auto wrecks, because there's always skid marks.
That's right.
And it's like, that is not the right way to think about this problem, okay? And it's like, maybe there's something else afoot here that we need to pay attention to that is on the outside. It's not being included in the shorthand version of the discourse.
So let me ask you this. I'm going to come at it from a weird angle to get to the point of disruption. So I was noticing people who look old. Like, what makes somebody look old? You know, so it's their body, it's kind of how they present themselves. It is, and what made me think of this thing is there's a really important factor of hope and belief and value. So I have to, if I'm in a habit and it just feels so overwhelming and it's just so hard that you give up hope, you're like, screw it, it's never going to change. I'm a loser. It's always going to be this way. So you have all this negative self-talk, which takes away your ability to hope for something better, or to believe something better, to take that step to even recognize that I have a habit. So what kind of, I mean, it sounds so ephemeral. So what part does that have in disruption of a habit, or maybe even noticing it?
That's huge. No, it's like, I talk about this with patients, like, it's a mental habit, okay? And it's like, and this will be like the glue that holds the habit set together, right? The psychological complexes are reinforced by the, you call it self-talk. But it's like the little narrative that we tell ourselves. And the issue is I've watched this for a long time now. I teach people how to avoid anxiety by anxiety being associated with such talk that's like not literal talk, but like internal dialogue.
Right.
And I had this problem because I would drive down my country road and there's another squish bunny and I would get upset for it too long. And I'm like, 20 minutes. I'm like, 20 minutes is too long. I'm like, oh my God, I need help here. This is really upsetting because there's going to be another dumb bunny.
There's a lot of bunnies.
They just get run over all the time.
Right.
There's so many of them, and the drivers drive so fast, and it's heart-wrenching.
Yes. Yes.
The little bunny never did anything wrong except be underneath your wheel once, and it was too many times. Oh my God. So I said, my God, what can I do? And what I did was I start spontaneously, whenever I see the dumb bunny, I say the Lord's Prayer. And then I don't know how fast that occurred, but I tell people 90 days, and it caused me to stop being upset by it. And I was like, that was impressive, right? So I'm like this. So what I do is tell people when their mind is the problem.
Mm.
So I used to be real interested when I study people with anxiety, because anxiety is the same kind of like a habitual problem. Because you're like used to wringing your hands or something when you know what I mean, about things that you can't control by thinking about them. So I told them to start saying the Lord's Prayer. Now, prior to that, I said, I used to ask them real carefully, like, what's bothering you? And I thought it was important. And after observing people, I figured out that it has no bearing whatsoever. The thing that you think is bothering you is not the problem. The thing that's bothering you is your mind. The mind.
Wow. Hey there, let's stick there for a second. So you're saying you can be thinking of whole myriad, like you think you're thinking. It can be any kind of thing over here, but what the real issue is just this one thing all the time.
No,
and
the
it's
thing
just
is
your
this.
mind.
And you touched it almost. You didn't notice it though. It was too subtle for you. Your brain didn't attach to it. It goes like this. So I heard myself say this to somebody one time. You know, it goes like this. So when you're trying to go to sleep and you can't go to sleep because you can't stop thinking and you just keep on. I said, you're not really thinking. You just think you're thinking, right? And it's like, you're not thinking at all. You are being possessed by your thoughts.
So wait, stop for a second. So then what is thinking?
That's a different function. That's a different function. But it's like, so you're like this, it's like this is perfect because I tell you this is how I introduce this to my patients when I'm telling them this anxiety related discourse, is that the Hindus have been talking about the mind like it's a horse for 5,000 years. Mm. Okay, and they say this, if you try to chase the horse, you're going to get tired and dirty. And that's what anxiety is, right? People tell me they're not getting any sleep because they're pulling their hair out because of something that they can't fix by thinking about it. And it's like, it doesn't matter because you're not even really thinking. You're just being possessed by your thoughts and they're dragging you all over the neighborhood. And so I tell them this, it's like, so the Lord's Prayer is the way you train your mind to obey your will. And I tell them it's like this, it's like horses and riders. It's like, the will should ride the horse. Mm-hmm. The cowboy rides the horse. The horse does not ride the cowboy. And so when you think you're thinking, as opposed to actually thinking, is when the mind is riding you, cowboy.
And I can tell, I don't have to have some intellectualization of that. I can tell that that's the case if I am filled with anxiety, if it is distracting me. Like, how do I tell that?
That's right.
Oh my gosh, hard. I'm in this moment now. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so upset by the bunny. Lord's Prayer. Oh,
yeah. And that's right. So it's like this. You have to. I'd say that's probably the hardest part, because it's like it's well, I call it fish water problem, because it's hard for the fish to see the water, and it's like it looks like thinking. It's very close to thinking, and it's like I tell them, if you're becoming emotionally distressed by the thoughts, that's a sign. Mm-hmm. Okay, because it's like what is it? The thinking is causing you to have emotional distress, and it is causing you habitually to do something that you otherwise would not do. Does that make sense? So it's kind of locking you in, right? So like So like, okay, so you see this as a triggering mechanism that might cause you to do something else to cause yourself to be comforted, like go eat some more chocolate ice cream or something like that.
We talk about that in conflict coaching all the time. We talk about what triggered you in this particular instance. And what I say by triggering is exactly what you just said. You're so caught up in your reaction to whatever you're perceiving is that you lose the ability to consciously choose the path you'd like to do, or to think about what reaction would I like to have in this situation, or what would be the good thing to say. You lose that ability because I'm now so triggered. I'm now so flipping ticked off by you looking at me in that eye rolly fashion that now I can't. The horse is now completely dragging me around on the beach.
That's right. It's like, so what do you get? See, the issue is then, so you're emotionally distressed by the thought processes going on in your
Right.
own, that you're
Yes.
like, the answer is ice cream, or whatever the answer is.
Yes.
I'm going to click
Yes.
the habit that turns it off, right? Because you're like, you have a mechanism that you have in play that you have already figured it out
Yes.
by random selection,
Trial and error.
right? And you go, that works. That just turns it off. That works. So you're like, it goes to this. Okay, so
Yes.
carbohydrate consumers now. So I do the ketogenic thing, right? And it's like this. So you get hungry, and so your stomach rumbles, and you're like, I'm hungry. I better go eat something. And you have like this insane urge to eat, right? And you think it's because you're hungry, and it's like, you're hungry because your stomach is gargling. And I'm like this. No, the bacteria that live in your stomach are hungry and are causing all kind of stink until you throw some carbohydrates down here, because that will turn off the poisons we're putting into your gut to make it rumble like this and irritate you, because we want you to drop some carbs now.
And let me add on to that. Yes. And I really like the way that ice cream tastes. I mean, I like it. So my excuse for loving it is my stomach's hungry and it's rumbling. It gets back into that chicken egg thing. Like, I really want to eat that pint of ice cream because it tastes really good and it tastes all yummy. Oh, and my stomach's rumbling. So I have to eat it.
Right?
So it's kind of interrupting that pattern.
Right. So it's like interrupting patterns is tough. It's like it's uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Because it's like you do the thing that's uncomfortable.
But what you said was so critical, because it wasn't like, okay, let's get back to cigarettes. My answer has been cigarettes to whatever the stimulus has been. So what you said was, you're not saying, okay, cold turkey. What you're saying is observe it. Pay attention to that urge for the cigarette. Tell yourself that you'll have that cigarette in 4 or 5 minutes.
I tell the patient to write down notes and then bring them back in and tell me how long that thing lasts. Now that'll be interesting, because now we're working on it as a collaborative effort.
Yes.
And it's like, and then it's like a science experiment. Okay. You're like, because you're going to watch it, and it's like, now you're hunting that.
And it makes me more of an observer, not the victim. Like, so now I can observe this as a thing. I'm now outside of it.
So it's like an agency. You get more agency, and
yes.
The issue is this: is the other thing that I would point out is that the thing attaches itself to your ego. The psychologists would call it a complex. Okay.
So tell me why that's important.
So it's ego identification. I'm a smoker. Mm-hmm. I'm a smoker, right? I want to stop smoking because I'm a smoker. And it's like, well, no, you just have an urge to smoke and you just keep on lighting them up. That's different. That's not the same as being a smoker. That's just someone who burns cigarettes and inhales them occasionally. And not right now.
But if I identify myself as a smoker, obviously.
Oh, now you're ego identified as a smoker. Now you're like, it's harder for you to not be a smoker. Because I go like this, the people are like this, I'm a smoker. I said, how long have you been smoking? They tell me, and then I go, when did you quit? And they're like, I didn't.
I'm not
like,
smoking.
Where's your cigarette, man? I'm like, what are you talking about? And it's like this, just because it's like this. It's like you interrupt their thought processes in some way, because it's confusing, because it's like ridiculous, right? So you say stupid things that don't have to make sense. Like so I'll tell you what, I know a way that will help with this. Just stop setting them on fire. They'll last so much longer. Right? And it's like this, like, that's just stupid, doctor. Right? I know, right? That's what I'm good at, though. Right?
So, for your the people listening to this podcast, I want to get into one point that we've talked about a few times, and this is the Lord's Prayer. So, what you've talked about was interrupting the mind, getting control of the mind, the will riding the mind, the cowboy riding the horse. Why the Lord's Prayer?
Oh,
Why not hey
right,
diddle
right,
diddle? Why
right.
not
Well, I
anything
say
else?
this is what I say to all my patients, and I've been prescribing this for like 12 years, right? And I learned a lot of this from, like, I had one atheist, and I learned so much because I got her to do it. She's like, but I don't believe. And I go, well, you think it matters what you believe? Oh my God. Right? And it goes like this. It doesn't matter, because it's like this. The issue is this. And I say, Mary had a little that might work, but it may not be complex enough. It may not be long enough, and it hasn't been tested. And I have one that works. And it will be unethical for me to test another one because I have one that works. And to test another one might cause someone to go untreated properly. And that would be unethical. And I can't do it. And it's like, so that being said, the issue is it has nothing to do with any religious function whatsoever. If you must be so, I like, because people have an anti-religious bias in something, in my estimation. So there's like going to be tickling some psychological
Right.
triggers here.
Yes.
I know that. So I always am aware of that. But it's like this. I tell them it's the same as the round pen for training a horse. So I tell them about the round pen for training a horse. So train the horse, the cowboy first has to establish the intention of dominating the horse's behavior with his will. Otherwise, the horse is going to kick him in the head, jump over a fence, and chase a mare. Because hanging out with the mares is way more fun than hanging out with the cowboy who's going to make me work and do stuff and obey. And he's not even probably going to give me a carrot, right? Much less an apple or a lump of sugar, for God's sake, right? And so the round pen is a giant round pen, oddly, right? Where the cowboy puts a bridle, has a giant rope on it.
Yes.
And then he has a little whip in the other hand. And he walks in a tiny little circle in the middle, and the horse runs around the outside. So the horse is running around the outside, and then the cowboy crosses the middle, and now he's in front of the horse. The horse is like, wow, that guy is fast. He's in front of me now. Turns around and runs away again. And the cowboy slaps him in the butt with his little whippy thing, just to make him run a little bit, so he gets incentive. So he just makes him do this, and he's just going around in circles until the cowboy's satisfied that the horse has learned a little bit, and then he lets him go. So the round pen for the mind is rote memorization. You're not thinking at all when you're reciting a rote memorization. There's no thinking involved. The mind must obey the will, like dialing the telephone, the old rotary phones for you people who don't know how to operate them.
Mm-hmm.
There's a good YouTube.
No judging, just saying, just pointing out.
There's a. You look this up. I got a good laugh. I saw this maybe a couple of years ago, and I showed it to a patient the other day. YouTube teenagers rotary phone.
I know, right?
just for some amusement value.
Just for some giggles.
Here's a number. Dial this number, guys. Good luck with that.
Right.
So it's like this. I learned a lot from the atheist, actually, who was doing that Lord's Prayer, because she was the one who taught me the essential element of the will associated with it. Because she said, she comes in one day, and I said, how's that working for her? And she said, it's helping. And I'm like, she goes, I regard it as a distraction. I'm like, oh, that is not correct. Okay, because it's not a distraction. Because if you think it's like, hey, shiny thing, then you're not doing it. Does that make sense? And it's like, it's necessary to establish the intention to dominate your thinking with your will. Otherwise, you don't do it. You can't do it. And so I was doing like this. So I've been prescribing this for a long time. Then I'm wandering around my shop one day, and I'm like, I was making my decks and stuff out back, and I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, man, you suck as a carpenter, man. And I'm like this. I'm like, whoa, full stop, man. Dude, you're a doctor. You're not a carpenter. Of course you suck as a carpenter. I mean, like, what were you thinking? Like some grandiose scheme going on in your head, and you're kicking yourself because, hey, you're not a brilliant brain surgeon either, dude. How about that? Right? And it's so it's like we are in a habitual pattern of kicking ourselves because we're the only dog that's always there, right?
And say that, because that was the other thing I wanted to point out. You're talking about, and we've talked about this before too, is self hypnosis.
Mm,
Hypnosis,
mhm.
and what a coach would talk about, storytelling and these tapes that we have in our head, and we believe these tapes we have in our head because we've said them so many times. So tell me a little bit about hypnosis and self-hypnosis and that whole thing you just did about, oh, I suck as a carpenter. Well,
I know.
and you were able to interrupt it because you were aware of the thought at the
I
time.
was, but yeah, but it's like this. It's like I say, I tell the people, look, I give them the tool, and I say the hardest thing is to know to engage it.
Mm.
That's because it's like this, because it looks like you're thinking. And it really is almost impossible to tell the difference between when you're thinking or when the psychological complex is thinking. Because the complex is as smart as you are. It has access to all the facilities that you have access to. And so it looks like you're thinking. And if your ego identified with it, you can't tell the difference. So when I tell the smoker to look at their urge to smoke as a separate entity, now there's a separation that makes it easier to understand and identify the function that's occurring.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, so yeah, the self-criticism that's tough, man. That one's hard to see because we're so used to kind of kicking ourselves. You know what I mean?
And
Because
that's
it's
the
like,
nature of habits, isn't it? Because they're there running. It's hard to recognize them until it becomes like, oh my gosh, I ended up at work and I wasn't paying attention. I was supposed to go to the playground. Because
right, you're like, whoa.
totally on. Yeah, that's right.
And it's okay. That's just you turned your mind off enough, and your subconscious drove you to the place that it thought you were supposed to go, right?
So we're talking about disruption of habits. Another aspect of disruption I've heard is, for example, and it gets back to eating again, is using your non-dominant hand or doing something, right? Because it's so slow, or using chopsticks or, it's so slow and you have to actually think about it. And so it is consciously disrupting the behavior when you're thinking about it. How does that fit into this concept of the cigarette shaped hole?
So
Other kind of tools you could do.
I talked to my CrossFit coach, Greg, and he said he was a pretty good drinker back in the day, right? But he quit drinking, and he said he had to get all new friends because they became boorish to him, and he was like, "That's interesting." And so I was telling the smokers that a long time ago. It's like, I say, smoking is good, but the problem is you may need a friend transplant because they're all going to see you as a smoker that's a quitter. And it's like, they don't want you to be a quitter, man. You're a smoker, dude. You're not a quitter. Don't be a quitter, right? And so it's like, because they're used to you behaving in a certain way, and then you're going to be around them, and they're all going to try to cause you to conform.
So that's that whole life again, likes it the way it likes it. And so you bring up a good point about your impact of changing your habits on others around you. Others around you that are used to Brad being Brad are going to react to you being
behaving
a
in a
quitter.
different
You're
way.
not acting right. So we're going to help you get back to where you are.
We're going to straighten you up again.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and it's like, what a thing. And it's like, it's no small thing. It's all because it's like there's I suppose a certain comfort, which is like you're like cutting against the social grain is really hard, right? It's like you're being antisocial in a sense, because it's like when you're changing your dynamic, your social function within the social group, like smokers. Now, I don't know from smoking because I'm not one, but that they go have smoke breaks and they smoke together and burn a cigarette. You know what I mean? There's a whole social game there that you're now not participating in and not playing, and that one is a routine that you can't easily do it. It increases the difficulty level of that one.
So have you ever worked with any of your clients through this who really are people pleasers? So for the people pleaser, this is again another challenge, because I don't want to upset you. I want to change my behavior, but you like make some noises that you don't like it. I'm like, oh, okay, we can just do it your way. Like, yeah, no, you need to do it the way you need to change the behavior in your nose. So being a people pleaser also offers another challenge to people who want to embrace themselves as I am an actor, not a victim. I'm a cowboy, not the horse. So it's hard for the people pleasers to be able to do something that might be uncomfortable for others. So there's other challenges to making those changes.
That's right. And I kind of, you kind of play it by ear, I think, when you're dealing with people, because it's like you're just trying to encourage them in a way that's kind of engaging to them. So
Right.
I don't really focus on like the personality type or anything like that. I'm just like, this is like, if they seem to engage positively with when I'm talking to them, then that's good to talk about. And if they kind of shut down, then it's like, well, that's not what it's
Not a good alley.
that's not interesting. So I don't really program it out like based on some typology.
Preferences.
I just engage that human being as an individual and see what happens.
But what you do offer, though, in addition to witty and sage advice and phenomenal medical knowledge, is accountability. Because I'm pretty sure that when you've had this discussion, the next time that person comes in, we're likely going to have a conversation about whatever that thing was you talked about last time. And you're going to say something irritating like, so how's it going?
Right? I mean, your nose. And they're
Yes.
like, well, yeah. And it's like, what's funny is like so you're telling them something, they're like, I hear them say something like, well, I can't do that thing. And I'm like, whoa. No, it's really rude to be hypnotizing yourself when I'm trying to hypnotize you. Right? Self-hypnosis when the doctor's trying to hypnotise you, man, that is untrue.
It's not done.
And so it is like when you hear the narratives that they're generating, but they're not generating it just in the back of their head. They're verbalizing it, and then you can interact with that. And so then you can knock it down and abuse it, and then do whatever, because it's like this. It's like if they say they can't do something, they're correct, right?
That's right.
If they say they can do it, they're correct too. But it's like the issue is you want to cause their attention to be on that verbalization as an impediment.
That's right. Because sometimes I found that clients are not even aware of what they said. It comes out, and then you reflect back. Did I just hear you say blah blah blah? And they go, oh, So sometimes people say, you're like, because it came from the back, and it's now out there for all of us to look at.
But it wasn't. It was the elephant talking. It wasn't the rider, man. It's like, wow, how about that?
That's right.
Which is that's the complex thing. It's like a psychological utterance, right? So there's a Dr. Enriquez in JMU. He would say he has these there's two filters. There's a filter that's from the animal to the psychological, which he calls the Freudian filter, which is the back conversation that you don't let out. There's another filter in the front he calls that the Rogerian filter, which is you just don't say that in public. Okay, so it's like, so we have these different conversational compartments, and he calls them different minds, but it's like, it's the construct there is like, it just got through the filter because you were bothering it enough, and the filter got distracted, right?
But how important, right, then to be able to say that, because then you can actually see on the other side of the filter.
Right, so that would be like a Freudian slip, I suppose.
Yes.
It's all right, and it's like I say, it's interesting to me. To me, it's just like you just engage the human being like a human being, and treat them with respect, and be encouraging to them, and don't expect much. Right?
Well, let me ask you this. We've talked about kind of these negative habits, but what about the positive formation of habits? So, for example, I wanted to make sure I was washing my towels once a week. Because frankly, I would look at them, I'm like, oh my gosh, and then a month, I swear, whatever would go by, because life happens really fast. I'm like, I really think I need to get on those towels more frequently. So I consciously made myself a checklist. So every Monday, I just grab the towels, they just go in.
right?
And it did not take that long that now I'm like, oh, every Monday I don't have that just happens. So unconscious habit, Linda, just does it. So
Right.
you can also, the positive formation of habits you want to create,
Right.
as opposed to, we've been talking about those we want to address and
Right.
perhaps alter.
Right. So it's like that one is, I tell the people with that. So with regard to the use of the Lord's Prayer as a method to control the mind, to train the mind, to stop annoying me, right? I tell people 90 days. Try it for 90 days. And it's like, well, I think that's more than enough time to ingrain a habit if you are practicing it, right? And it's like, it's just practice. And it's like, and the funny thing is like, so you're like, okay, so you're trying to do your
My
towels
towels.
every Monday, right? And then you miss it Monday. Some people throw the towel in. I mean, not to be labor the issue, but they'll quit, right? Because it's like, oh, I sucked at that. All right, they just quit. And I'm like, well, no, it's expected. You're not expected to be perfect, right? You're expected to be attentive and go, okay, I didn't.
But what you can do, and what I have noticed is, like, say Monday goes, because Monday is just horrible and everything's blowing up. You could put them in on Tuesday,
and
it's still once a week. So when you think about it, you stick them in. But what is so wonderful about that is that it doesn't take that long to create a habit. There's this day comes, I put this in, it's very easy, and then you go on. So I'd like your viewers to also be thinking about creating good habits they would like, because there's mechanisms they can use to make changes in their life that might help them with that cornerstone of the cigarette-shaped hole.
Yeah. So I did that one. So like I did, I wake up real early every morning to go to work, because I have early, this is for the audience, that I do office hours that are online medicine starting about 4:00 in the morning. Okay. So I'm like, I wake up early and I'm like this, I'm like, so I just changed my habit. I said, I have to go to sleep around 7:30 in the evening to wake up at 3:20 to be able to get to wherever I'm going to do my online work.
Yes.
And I never deviate from that pattern. Well, I do deviate. I'm like, I try not to, because it's like this, because then it's too hard to get used to a different pattern.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. So the habit
yes.
works. You're just like, this is like,
That's
what
right.
works? Here's my little friend.
Uh-huh.
So so it's like the issue is pattern behavior, right? It's like, how do we figure out what habit you want and then reinforce it and do it.
And you've talked about a number of tools. So it's not just, this hasn't just been an intellectualization of habits. You've talked about a number of tools of recognition, mindfulness, taking control of the mind, a number of things that you can do. When do I say the Lord's Prayer? When you are feeling that kind of anxiety. Like, I don't need to analyze it that
when
closely.
your mind is kicking you in the head.
Yeah,
it's
just
like,
do it.
This is time that's like, whoa. But like I say, so you're changing that one is so you're creating a new response to the trigger.
Right.
Okay, so like when I want to smoke, oh, that means I'm supposed to look at my clock and think about smoking in 4 minutes.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Or when I'm thinking about something and it's agitating me, then it's, oh, that's time for me to say the Lord's Prayer, because this means my mind is kicking me, right? So you're changing the significance of the trigger.
Yes.
And attaching a new
behavior
response.
with it. Yes.
Right. So you did
Powerful.
it with the towels. You did it with the towels. You're like, oh, this means on Monday.
That's right.
I don't have to. Then it doesn't bother me all week long.
Yeah, I never even think about towels now, because that just happens.
See,
which is great.
Right.
It seems so stupid, but I don't have that on my mind.
Right. So yeah, because it's like the issue is so Steve Jobs did it with his clothes, and I think Albert Einstein did too, which is just have one kind of clothes that you wear, because
That's
it's
right.
like, then I don't have to think about it. And I'm kind of trending in that direction myself, because I'm like, this is so much work, man. I'm lazy. That's like, whoa, why do I have to think about this? It's just so much work,
That's right. That's right.
right? Right, and that's like that. So yeah. So the interesting function. So we go back to the habit thing, right? The habit thing, and it goes to this other premise, which is. So we'll talk about Dr. Enriquez again, because I can mention him again. That always makes everybody happy to hear their own name.
That's right.
Right. So he talks about behavioral investment theory.
Wow. Big
And
word.
so behavioral investment theory is, look, we try to be efficient with our efforts. Okay. So look, so you're fretting about the towels.
Right.
And you're like, no. I'm going to turn that off by making a habit out of it. Then I don't have to think about it at all.
Right.
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 And so it's like, so it is, it's, the issue is this, and now we're going to go back to another habit. This is another habit, which is the prejudice thing, right?
Mm.
Okay. So it's like, this is like, it's like we have automatic behaviors that are kicked in that are behaviorally invested to minimize our effort.
Our conscious effort.
Our output, right.
Yes.
Because it's like, it's how much information processing do I want to do here? Right. And so it's like, so information processing is what behavior is. So you're like, the information is the towels get dirty, like all the time. They sit and
they look at you all accusingly.
They just keep getting dirtier and dirtier and dirty.
All the time.
Wait, when are you going to wash us?
Yes.
It's like, oh my God, you're disgusting.
That's exactly right. Yes.
I can't believe you're letting me sit here looking like this. Oh my, don't you see me? It's a shame on all of us.
Right. That's right.
And so it's like, we develop our habits to minimize the information processing. So it's like this. So think about this. I'm going to stop smoking now. Well, what am I going to do instead? And now my friends are all wanting me to smoke because now they're having to think about what to do. It's like, dude, how come you're not burning one with us, man? Right?
Well,
this is so awkward. Oh, we're at a smoke break, for God's sake.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's like information processing. So it's like, and it's like, if we look at it as information processing, right? Then you go, what is the information? So the unconscious is bringing the information. So it's like, it says it's time to burn a cigarette, or it's time to do look at the dish, the towels, right? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That it's like, so there's the unconscious is making you uncomfortable, and then you have to satisfy that discomfort. And it's like, what's the most efficient way to do it? I think I'll eat the ice cream, right? Or I'll burn the cigarette.
Or in the case of towels, sometimes people and myself develop the ability to just not see. Like you wonder about people, you're like, you have a 10-foot dust bunny. Seriously, how can you not see that thing? It's attacking you every time you come in the house. But it's amazing what you can not notice.
No, you just go like this. Oh, no, I'm just studying it. I'm watching that dust bunny grow. I'm seeing its behaviors and how does it work. And it's like,
but it's
actually just interesting to me instead of being disgusting.
The concept of becoming an actor and not a victim. I can actually make changes. I can make my life better. I can do things in a different way. I can do that, which reverberates in other areas as well.
That's right. And it's like the trick is like this. You have to want to do it. And want, we go back to this again.
You go back to want.
And it goes like this. It comes from Old Norse. Want. V-A-N-T.
See, that just sounds more powerful right there, just with that accent.
It comes from another one, Vanner. V-A-N-R. Lacking. Vanta, to be lacking. So it's like
right.
It's like, so you have an empty space that needs to be filled in your life, right? And, you know, it's like the cigarette looks cigarette shaped, right? I want it. The people say I don't like they're like, it's funny. They're like, I want to stop smoking. And go, no, you don't. I have to fight with them just because it's perverse, right? Just that makes sense, because it makes them think about it and just jars their head.
And, you know, when by saying I want to smoke, that's a socially acceptable thing to say. So I get to keep smoking, but I get to be virtuous by saying, you know, I want to quit. And you're saying, yeah, no, you really.
No, it's like that. It's like the fact that you keep on burning them is telling me that you're lying. Why are you lying to me?
It's what we call a tell.
That's it. That's it. That's it. So it is like, so I think it is like, you have to, the trick is this, it's like the psychological change. It's so hard to do, like, it's like, it can be gut wrenching, because you're like, you know, your friends that you hang out with and you used to burning cigarettes with, you may not hang with them anymore.
That's right.
And that's like, whoa,
right.
What does that mean? And it's like, well, that's kind of scary, isn't it?
And it can feel like such a loss. I mean, that is such a lot, you know, you're sacrificing those relationships. And maybe for some reason you're very attached to them. They're very valuable. So yeah.
That's right.
That may not be insignificant. That's not an insignificant choice to make.
No, it's not at all. It's
right.
quite, that's why I said a friend transplant. It's like, wow, it's like,
that's right.
So I guess what you would do if in that case is that when with, you know, is because you have to be sensitive to people and their human needs, right? And it's like, I would encourage the person to generate some other social outlet that's not related to smoking. You know what I mean?
That's it. Yes.
And
that they really enjoy.
Then right? We can they'll infect those people with the smoking urge. You know what I mean? Like, we'll get a whole new smoking set of people. Like, oh no.
Let's not do that.
No, don't do that one.
No, don't do that.
Right.
That's right.
So yeah, but then what happens is you have your crew, say so you have to do it like strategically. You would plan to go, so I may have to cut my friends off that smoke too much because they're going to want me to smoke. So you start creating social network that expands outside the smoker field, and then you're more grounded and can maneuver.
Or is it possible that some of those smoker friends you only smoke in particular only when you go to the bar? Can you see them outside and do other things with them? Can you do things that don't involve, can you go to the gym together? Can you go for a walk together?
Well, I would say that it's like that. It's like, okay, so you can do that. Okay. I'm like, if I was talking to the patient and saying that, I'm like, okay, look, here's how it goes. This is risky behavior. Because there's the high likelihood that one of you is going to want to burn one. Right. And so it's like, and the other person is probably going to trigger you to want to burn one. Okay. Even if you don't do it. Okay. Which is a high possibility too. And it's like this. So I'm like, as soon as anybody breaks out a cigarette, you have to break up. You have to go away. You can't stay together. You have to, you know what I mean? You have to plan for it, like strategically. Like, how does this play out when somebody wants to light up?
And let's also just touch on briefly here. Change is really hard. This is not an insignificant thing we're talking about. So you need to do self-care in other areas too. Eating right, sleeping well, you know, the other things need to be going well. So you're not totally stressed in other areas of your life while you're trying to make this big change. Like, I don't want to be sleep deprived and
and it's like
drinking a lot of caffeine or whatever, and then I want to stop smoking. I need to be solid in other areas.
Right. The thing I find the people that have quit smoking and then restart, it's usually as a response to external stressors. You know, so it's like they're having their job problem, their family problem, or whatever, and then it's like it's a multiplicity of events, and then they just start smoking again as a oh dear God.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I appreciate that, and it's like, okay, but we already know you can quit, and it's like, okay,
that's right.
It's but so it's like that. Is the elephant is relapsing and wants more peanuts because it's so uncomfortable. So whatever's irritating it bad enough.
Right.
But it's like, so the smoking in that sense is a symptom. It is not the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're blaming the smoking again, because I want to get rid of the smoking. But it's like, yeah, no, the smoking is not the problem here, dude. The problem is the other stressors that are generating the urge to smoke.
So I would always think about my Diet Coke and M&M thing, or chocolate. It didn't have to be M&Ms. Let's be serious. Is self-medication. I would think about it because I knew how to self-medicate myself with those external stressors, and I knew, and so it wasn't the medication; it was the stressor I needed to deal with. So exactly what you're saying here. I know how to deal with stress, and it's through this part that's bad. I need to change how I deal with
That's
it.
it. So if we look at this like internal dialogue, the internal dialogue is also like a facilitating function that keeps you doing
Facilitating function. Tell me about that.
okay, so it goes like this, is like, okay, like whatever it is that's external stressors, right? Then I'm like, oh, I'm just a loser. No. Then it allows you to continue doing the same things that you consider to make you a loser.
Right.
Right. So it's like this.
That's right.
It justifies my loserness and my, my boss
just supports it.
rates
Of course,
me.
right.
So it's like it maintains the psychological like depression necessary for me to function in my depressing life that I find so depressing that I just beat myself up over. You know what I mean? It's like, so it's like this self-perpetuating cycle, right?
And it gets back to exactly how you started out with the cigarette-shaped hole. Your life is structured exactly to keep you where you are, including your thought life, your friends, everything.
Interesting. So this goes to the first word of the Hebrew Bible, right? So Brashit, right? Brashit is translated as Genesis, okay? And so it means, it can be broken into two words, bara and shit, which is to make discourse, okay? And it is, so it's the discourse of the individual with the universe that generates the field that attracts the things that are in your life and repels those things that are not in your life. And it's your responsibility because you are generating the field the way you interact with everything that's not you.
Boy, that is such a tee up to the next conversation. That sounds so rich. There's so much to what you just said.
That's it. No, but it's our first word.
You were using English and Hebrew all there at once, and it was like I thought I understood them, but then it was like you put them all together, and it made this really big thought.
Right. So it is the function is the words that go through your mind are significant, and active,
words have power.
Attract and repel.
Yes.
Inside your life, and it's like, wow, how about that? That's a pretty good spot to wind it up a little bit.
Yeah,
it's all very good. Like I say, I think the most interesting thing is how do we generate what we want, what we really want, not what we think we want or what we say we want, right? But what is really happening so that we can take full responsibility and act as agents for the generation of our life, right?
That's right. Yes.
And it's like,
yes.
It's like really hard because it's like we think we want things we really don't want. We talk about it a lot too, and it's like, okay.
You're right.
And it's like, the trick is, the smoker that says they want to quit, I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm a little bit dubious, right? Because it's like, fuck, you keep on buying these things like crazy, man. Right? I said, just stop buying them. It works, man.
And I'm sure the action is like, wait, what?
Right? It's like, this is really funny to me, man. It's like, the people are like this. Okay, so I'm trying to get them to do a ketogenic diet, right? And they're like, but it's so hard not to eat the roll. And I go, actually, you're incorrect. It's so much harder to pick the roll up and stuff it in your mouth and chew on it and then swallow it than to just leave it there. It takes less work to leave it there and just look at that pretty thing on the table there, right? But it is like that, doctor humor's bad. That's all it is. Well, shoot. Well, I had a good time chatting with you and learning.
Thank you,
about
Dr. Worrell. That was very informative and helpful. I appreciate that.
I enjoyed it. Well, you have a wonderful day.
You as well.
All right. See you later.
See ya. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Best Medicine Podcast with Bradley H. Werrell, DO. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe below, either over there or over there. Also, if you're interested in a medical consultation with myself, there's also information below.